Dobar dan I dobrodošli. Sit down and relax as we are about to read some webtoons and manga. I recommend purchasing the official scans or translations and reading along with those open as well, for a better reading experience and to support the creators behind the works that I react to in my streams. Links are in the description. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon, so subscribe to or follow some European chick if you want to read along and suggest what to read next. Now without further ado, let's read.
Devilman. So I had to change the manga for the Wednesday slot. It was supposed to be Guns. I put it in my community tab on my channel. Guns won the poll for the next manga to read on Wednesdays after JoJo, but there is no digital version of Guns. I thought that the Dark Horse translations, that you were able to get the copies in digital format too, and not just in print, but that's not the case. So that's on me. I'm sorry for not doing the proper research before putting Guns into the poll. Maybe that's the case for other manga that I put in my polls too, but in any case, I took the number 2 manga, the second place manga that won the poll, Devilman, and I looked for where we can read them. The link is in the description. Here I am taking scans of the classic edition that we're gonna read here. It's Devil Time, yes. And before we get into Devilman, I don't usually do this with any manga, but I want to do this with Devilman because I love Devilman. Devilman is historically important. If you care about manga, it's super important. It's the forefather of all your favorite manga. I don't care which one it is, of all of them, okay? And it's from the year 1970 to 1973. It's also why I hate that Devilman Crybaby, the newest adaptation that we got from Devilman, that it takes place not in the 1970s. For further information on why I hate the Crybaby anime, watch my video on it. I'll link it somewhere. Not right now. But I'll link it after I finish the stream. And you can watch why I hate the Crybaby anime there and why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Namely, I want to introduce you to the context of Devilman first. Because trust me, when you get into Devilman, it feels like a shitpost. It's written in a way that is not really, you're not really familiar with that. It really feels like comedy, but it's supposed to be taken seriously, trust me. So, anyway, it's not just because of the way it's written that I need to introduce you to the history of manga. I also need you to know the context in which the story takes place and in which Nagai Go grew up in, and why he has certain themes in Devilman that are touched upon in the manga. This is why I want to read you one sub-chapter from a chapter in Sugimoto Yoshio's Introduction to Japanese Society. He's a sociologist from Japan, obviously, and he gives everyone who's interested in Japan an introduction to Japanese society, in case you want to get to know real-life Japan and how it came to how it is today. So I want to read you one subchapter of a chapter. It's not that long. It's a few pages. And then, well, at first a subchapter of a subchapter of a chapter from the same book. I'm going to list you the chapter names, sub-chapter names too after the stream. I just decided on that on a whim. So I'm going to read that first so we know the context in which this type of literature was produced. Because Devilman belongs in what, I think at least, it belongs into the category of apocalyptic literature from Japan. It has its own taste. And you're gonna know why it's apocalyptic when I read the context, the historical context, the societal context for Devilman to you, and when we read Devilman and when we finish Devilman, you're gonna know why it ended the way it did, why it developed the way it did, why it contains these ideas, this Christian no, it's not symbolism, it's actual, it derives a lot from Christianity. But yeah, as I said, I want to give you the historical context so we know what we're getting into, because surprisingly, we don't live in the 70s anymore. We don't have a memory of what happened to us or our parents before that, before we read Devilman. So I need to take you back in time for you to understand where Devilman was produced, where Devilman was consumed, and by who. Okay? So I'm gonna put a link to, I mean, it's, you should, academic literature is supposed to be shared, okay? I'm gonna put you a link to these chapters that I'm gonna read to you out loud now. I'm gonna put the link to them in the description after I finish this, okay? If not immediately after I finish this, then tomorrow, okay? I promise. So you can read them by yourself. But before we even start reading the manga, I need to read it out loud now. And in case you don't want to read it by yourself, you hear it from me. Okay, so the first part that I'm going to read is from the chapter called Diversity and Unity in Education. And we're at the part where it's about excessive teacher control. I don't know which version you are gonna buy. There is a version from, I think, 2020, the newest edition of this book. Because I think the first edition came out in 1995 or something like that. And a lot changed since then. So that's why you have a 2020 fourth or fifth edition now. This should stay the same. Okay, this is the same probably now in all editions, but I can't tell you the page number or the chapter number because I don't know what edition you're reading. So I'm just going to tell you the chapter titles. Excessive teacher control. Rigidity, stringency, and regimentation have increasingly dominated Japanese education since schools increased teacher control of pupils in the 1970s and 1980s. This trend reflected the response of educators to the rise of political protest in secondary schools in the late 1960s and to the growth of school violence in the late 1970s and early 1980s. So this context is important. Now, why were there these protests? Why was there a rise in violence? I'm going to read to you after this. To suppress potential deviance from school norms, school administrators and teachers tried to tighten their grip on students by shaping their outward behavioral patterns into a uniform mode. This tendency gave rise to what many commentators call kanri kyoiku. Fucking hell, my eyes are so dry. the regulatory style of education that underscores control of students' bodily expressions and tries to standardize their appearances and personal effects. School teachers are not a uniform body, which support this trend unreservedly. Many resisted the moves and attempted to maintain the relatively decentralized liberal structure of education established immediately after the end of World War II. This was most visible in a series of confrontations which the Japan Teachers Union mounted against the Ministry of Education. The union took a firm stance in the name of democratic education against almost every move to reverse post-war educational reform and tighten state control. Though the union gradually lost ground to the ministry and lost membership as part of the overall decline in unionization, some teachers still maintain a genuinely progressive spirit. More importantly, many teachers are sincerely concerned about the well-being of their pupils, anxious to see them develop their potential fully, and eager to introduce innovative methods of teaching. Accordingly, one must look at the cost aspects of Japanese education in some perspective. Nonetheless, the price of regulatory education is highly visible in many aspects of school life. And then it goes on about corporal punishment, school regulations, the cost of regulatory education, ijime, which is bullying, school phobia, dropouts, and rehabilitation, and so on and so forth. We're not going to talk about that. We just have this short segment about excessive teacher control under this sub-chapter of regimentation and its costs within diversity and unity in education, chapter 5 in the edition that I'm reading. That was the first part. And I'm reading you this because Devilman takes place in school. This is about school children. I think Akira is, he's a teenager. I forgot if he's 16, 17, or 18. But this takes place in the 70s with students at the center. And apocalyptic literature, if you want to know more about it, the channel Pause and Select has a trilogy on, I think it's a trilogy, on apocalyptic literature, manga, and it's called Understanding Disaster. And I recommend that the closest context you're going to get is from the video called Understanding Disaster, Part 2, Akira and the Postmodern Apocalypse. Everything that I'm reading now for the introduction of Devilman also applies if, hopefully when, someday we also read Akira on this channel, okay? But anyway, we're going now to the chapter called Geographical and Generational Variations within the population, within the Japanese population, and the subchapter is that we're going to read now is called Generational Variations, okay? The rapidity of change in the Japanese social structure has produced distinct generational subcultural groupings. Different age groups underwent different family socialization and educational training. They also encountered different social and political circumstances in their childhood, adolescence, and early adulthood. Accordingly, the outlooks of contemporary Japanese differ depending upon whether they experienced in their youth the three fundamental phases of Japan's recent history. The first of these was World War II and its aftermath during the 1940s and 1950s. The second was the relative stability and affluence from the 1960s and the 1980s, consequent to the nation's rapid economic growth. The third phase began in the 1990s, which marked the unprecedented stagnation and recession of the Japanese economy. Nagai Go, the author of Devilman, was born in 1945. And Devilman was written in 1970. So this is why we need the context. He grew up immediately after World War II ended, in the 50s. That had a big influence on his upbringing, on his worldview, and on the type of literature that he has produced, okay? And Devilman in particular. Because the apocalyptic literature genre from this time, especially, it sees this, we're not gonna reform Japan, we're just gonna reset everything. You have that in Akira, for example, too. It's about not actually changing with civil society, with social movements. We're not gonna change society as it is. We're not gonna change the world as it is. It's fucking doomed. So we better fucking destroy it and have it restart somewhere else. It's escapism, if you're really strict about it, but it is the type of literature that Devilman falls into, and why it is like that. That's why we're gonna read this chapter now, okay? In relation to these three stages of recent history, the Japanese can be classified into 4 generations. The oldest of these is the wartime generation, comprised of those born in or before the early 1930s, who grew up before and during wartime and who have become a tiny minority because of their age. Next is the post-war generation, Nagai Go. Born between the late 1930s and early 1950s, whose childhood occurred during the nation's recovery from post-war devastation and impoverishment through the rapid economic growth of the 1950s and early 1960s. The third group is the prosperity generation, born between the late 1950s and the early 1970s, which has no recollection of Japan's wartime activity or post-war poverty, and which grew up during the period of a period when Japan achieved economic prosperity and high status in the international community. Members are now in their 30s and now at the writing of this edition here, and now in the 30s and 40s, and will lead Japan in the new future. Finally, the youngest group, which might be called the global generation, was born in the mid-1970s and later. So I have an older edition of the book open right now. For what we're about to read, we don't need the newer editions. The most recent ones, this one is okay. But generally, when you're talking about, science, all sciences, social sciences, the more recent your source, the better. Trust me. 2020 is the latest edition, and I would recommend you get that edition. I got this while I was in Japan. That was in 2016. Or was it when I wrote? Yeah. No, I think when I was, in 2016. I think this version is from... Either I opened a far older version, but I think I have a version from 2011. Anyway, the one that I got in college when I was in Japan, that was in 2016, was the 2011 version. Anyway, finally, the youngest group, which might be called the global generation, was born in the mid-1970s, and later this group grew up in a period when the waves of globalization crashed upon Japan's shores and when the information revolution was in full swing, and the Japanese economy began showing signs of serious stagnation. The socialization experiences of these 4 generations reflect the changing patterns of social constraint on the everyday life of the Japanese. Over the decades, disciplinarian, repressive, and stoic styles of sanctions and control have given way to manipulative and permissive forms. Concurrently, the key elements of generational subculture have shifted away from perseverance, patience, and diligence towards indulgence, relaxation, and an orientation valuing leisure. Speaking generally, it could be said that the wartime generation embodies pre-modern characteristics. The post-war generation exemplifies modern ones. The prosperity generation increasingly displays postmodern tendencies. And the global generation personifies global culture. And now, number 1, the wartime and post-war generations. I know I can't put it as well into words as the sociologist can, which is why it's boring, but I have to read this, just so we can get the context and then start with Devilman. Sorry about that. The wartime generation went to school under the pre-war and wartime education system, which placed an emphasis upon emperor worship, jingoism, and austerity. Many men in this group fought in battle and still justify aspects of Japan's wartime aggression. Others carry feelings of remorse, guilt, and shame for their actions and have committed themselves to pacifism. While politically split, the wartime generation has little choice but to collectively face the realities of post-retirement life. Those of the post-war generation had their childhood in the most turbulent years of change in the last century. In their primary and middle school years, they witnessed the breakdown of their value system and became skeptical of the war generation and the insecurity of inconsistency of its militaristic philosophy. The oldest of the post-war generation began school life during the war. City pupils in this group were evacuated to the countryside under the supervision of their teachers, grew up separately from their parents, and at the end of the war were primary school children. They remember a time when their teachers, who previously had preached imperialistic, militaristic, and totalitarian values, suddenly began to lecture on the importance of democracy, equality, and freedom. The middle group of the post-war generation comprises those who were born in 1939 and commenced their primary schooling in April 1946, as the first batch of pupils to receive post-war education without exposure to wartime state propaganda. These children have memories of their teachers telling them to blot out militaristic and nationalistic sentences from their textbooks. The final group of the post-war generation are those born in the so-called baby boom period of the late 1940s. They faced intense competition at all stages of their lives: entrance examinations to schools and universities, job applications, and promotions, because of sheer numbers. The media have popularized the phrase clod and lump generation to describe the great size of this group. Following the social anarchy that prevailed immediately after the war, this age group grew up in a milieu of reaction when school life began to show signs of increasing rigidity and control. The post-war generation grew up in an environment in which every traditional value was questioned, liberal values were encouraged, and democratic principles were inspired. When members of this generation reached their late teens and early 20s, they spearheaded the nationwide protests against ratification of the US-Japan Security Treaty in the late 1950s and 1960s, and social movements of the late 1960s and early 1970s against the Vietnam War. This is the period that's described with a lot of violence. There was a lot of violence in between the leftist groups that appeared during this time. And all of these new protest groups, they were trying to separate themselves from the old protest groups, the old rigid leftist groups. So these new student movements, there were old student movements, new ones, old leftism, like the Communist Party of Japan, and then there was the Red Army faction. And then there was another faction that was super fucking violent. They tortured their members. I think over a dozen of them died. There was a clash with the police during winter close to Tokyo in the mountains. They were taking hostages. It was a violent time. And because of these violent protests that never went anywhere, because they were all infighting, they were all kind of disorganized, and they were all, well, stopped with violence by the state. Nothing changed. They couldn't stop the ratification of the US-Japan Security Treaty. And that treaty was about how the US could start waging war from Japan without having to ask Japan first. And Japan was like, yeah, you can do that. And the people were like, no, hello, it's our land, it's our lives on the line here, you should ask us. And they were protesting that. And they lost. the treaty was ratified, and several times. It has like a 10-year period where it needs to be renewed, and it was renewed. So yeah, these violent protests that never succeeded, that were met with violence from the state, that had a lot of violence within their groups, that traumatized an entire generation. They were like, okay, well, fuck, we're powerless, no change can happen, leftist movements are kind of scary, how the fuck are we gonna change anything here? That is why what I'm reading is important. Continuing. The baby boomers also led campus protests around the country, which challenged all forms of academic and cultural authority. When the tide of these movements subsided, however, most of the activists became company employees and public bureaucrats seeking to climb the occupational ladder, with some turning into corporate soldiers devoted to the dictates of their firms. With regard to their international value system, those of the post-war generation are skeptical of collective dedication to organizational norms and bureaucratic mandates. In their actual behavior, however, they have inherited the style of the wartime generation and worked hard as working ants, workaholics, and economic animals, who toil for their organization at the cost of personal pursuits. This discrepancy is perhaps partly attributable to a variety of powerful sanctions imposed upon individual employees against lazy work styles, as delineated in Chapter 4. Employees and managers tightened control over workers under devastated conditions in post-war years. Employees also had strong incentives to work hard because Japan's economy could provide tangible rewards in return for their toil during the high growth period until the early 1970s and during the bubble economy period in the 1980s. These wartime and post-war generations remember how penurious the whole country was during and immediately after the war. Some experienced food shortages, even acute hunger, and shortages of cloth and other basic daily necessities. Others recall the days when people burned wood to cook rice and heat baths, warmed their hands and rooms in winter with charcoal braziers, and used newspapers as toilet paper. These generations witnessed and were themselves the engine of the spectacular transformation of Japanese life into the one in which satiation, oversupply of automobiles, and overconsumption of paper pose national problems. I am not sure. We don't need to. I don't think we need to read the prosperity generation bit. I think we have the context that we need right now for the Devilman manga. So yeah, I hope that wasn't too tedious. I think it's necessary. What's the book called again? Introduction to Japanese Society. Yes. For new viewers, Elda is currently giving essential context about what time Devilman was written and what was happening in Japan at the time. So, okay. We can now start reading Devilman. You know that there was a lot of sudden left-leaning ideas, liberalism, democracy, and other changes, social changes happening in Japan. They went from militarism and a pretty autocratic system to freedom, liberty, equality, and that is it. That is, you would you would think that is it, but these values clashed, and how you're gonna realize these leftist tendencies? You can't just stop at liberalism, right? When you start going left, some go all the way left. They say, why stop there at liberalism? Why not go to socialism, to communism, and so on? And Japan, still to this day, has the biggest communist, leftist, socialist party outside of former socialist countries. It's very interesting. And a lot of your favorite video game makers or anime producers or whatever, Hayao Miyazaki especially, he was, as far as I remember, even a member of the Communist Party. They're leftists. But also these leftist movements were, they were very violent. And change was hard to make happen, even impossible. There was a great stagnation after this. Not only, stagnation after this, but there was also a bit of hopelessness, which is why new religions could get a stronghold in Japan. And these new religions, why am I small elder? These new religions, because that was a very dynamic time, within one person's lifetime, they went from a feudal Japan to a militaristic war machine to having computers and cars within one person's lifetime. It was like the 1900s. It was such a dynamic time. So many things were changing. Where's the stability? What can give you stability in those times? And because a lot of people either turned to social movements or to violence because they didn't know what to do. There was economic change too. Or they went to seek some stability from new religions. And these new religions are most often a mixture of Buddhist and Christian and sometimes also Shintoist philosophy and lore, I guess. And Christianity became popular because it was banned until the Meiji Restoration. Christians were not allowed. Most of them fled the persecutions to Kyushu, where trade with the Portuguese was still somehow allowed, and the Portuguese were the ones that were on a mission to convert everyone to Catholicism. But yeah, the Christians in Japan fled persecution to Kyushu, and now Christianity saw a revival. And there was also Buddhism. There was also this mysticism and nationalism. Nationalism in the West gave way to what are they called? Fairy tales. Fairy tales that give you this lore of a nation, that give you world building of a nation, this legend of all these stories that were passed down from generation to generation. They're in our collective memory. They were all made in the 1900s, not 1900s, 1800s too. That's when especially Hans Christian Andersen, the brothers Grimm, and so on, they were collecting these stories that they saw appear everywhere with variations within their country. And Japan saw a revival of Shintoism during the time of nationalism. It saw a revival of Christianity because now that it opened, now it was globalized, it was open to world trade and to compete with the rest of the world. They got to know Christianity, and these new religions gave them some type of hope, something to hold on to, something that transcends them, that gives them an escape too. You don't need to change the status quo in society. There is a kingdom waiting on the other side anyway. Not all of them promise this type of narrative, but this is a popular narrative within Christian heavy new religions, right? And some of these new religions, they were social movements too. Aum Shinrikyo, everyone knows that. They were pretty violent. And everyone's therefore pretty suspicious of religious groups within Japan. But they also have some type of stability because they have strong ties to the government in Japan, especially the LDP. And they have strong ties to these new religions and these especially Christian heavy sects. So yeah, and that's always been like that. And even when you look at the government, the Japanese government, the LDP, it's basically a continuation because they were propped up by the US. The US, won against Japan, dropped the bomb on them, and then they were like, we're gonna prop up the politicians that we want. Because leftism was growing in Japan, they were like, we can't let communism come here. They're gonna be our vassal state. And we are gonna prop up these nationalists that were waging war in Korea and China before. We're gonna keep them there. All these war criminals and so on, they can stay there. It's a the internet died for a second there. Fucking hell, it's so unstable, it's so slow. Why? It's fluctuating. It's fluctuating pretty hard. Where was I? It's in stark contrast to what happened in Germany. In Germany, after the Nazis were defeated, Germany pretty much cleansed the country of everything that was tied to National Socialism, right? To reinvent themselves, have this new image to be basically an America 2.0 within Europe. And the other case in Japan, where basically the Japanese Nazis, they could have their own party and lead it. It's called the Liberal Democratic Party. And status, social status. In Japan, this is also from Sugimoto Yoshio, the sociologist that I read to you from. Social status in Japan is not something that you earn, that you achieve, that you work towards. It's something that's inherited. If your parents are doctors and they have a hospital, you're gonna become a doctor, and then you're gonna inherit that hospital, and so on and so forth. Politicians are the same. All of these politicians, a lot of them, they know each other. They're relatives. Like these former war criminals or these former politicians right after World War II, they are uncles, fathers, grandfathers of politicians now within the same party. It's all so incestuous, which is why stagnation is just normal. It all stagnates. Nothing has changed politically, really. I mean, it has changed in the way that there is now liberal democracy. But do you get this confusion for Japanese people? They're like first preaching war propaganda, then they're like, oh no, actually, let's forget what happened there during the war and that we're the bad guys. Liberal democracy is good now. But also we're not going to deal with our past, like with our crimes during the war. We're actually going to censor that in our school books. Our children are not going to get educated, so they don't know that the bad guys that did the bad things that we don't know about are still in power today. So this is the confusion. You get this leftist movement. You go from a totalitarian, militaristic regime, right-wing regime, to Okay, no. Let's go left and have democracy. But also let's stop there. Let's not go too left. Why? We don't know. So do you understand this confusion that they grew up in and why apocalyptic literature at the time was like, fuck this shit. Let's just wipe it all clean and start anew. I put the Subway Surfers gameplay beside her speech so I could focus on what she's saying without getting bored. Oh my god. TikTok has done irreparable damage to our generation. Anyway, now that we have the context out of the way, we can start with the manga. And we're just gonna be reading chapter 1 for now, and then I have to go. Alright, now. The Classic Edition 1. Chapter 1, Great War of Legends. Oh fuck, chapter 1 is 40 pages long. But yeah, the Christian, like the demonology here and the demon names and so on, and the designs, it's because of the influence of the new religions that were spawning all over Japan. Ran out of water. Chapter 1, Great War of Legends. You see the planet, you see dinosaurs, you see a volcano. And several volcanoes, and they all erupt. Now, you're right on time if you're just here for the manga. Night. And all these lights falling down. And they're angels. Now look at these angels. They're having fun on Earth. They came from the heavens, and within Earth, there came the demons. These are the devils. Angels versus devils. I like how there is no dialogue. It's just pictures shown to us. The story is just told in stagnant pictures. And I love that. And also the freaky monster designs that you have in modern manga, like, I mean, manga nowadays, even, you know, Chainsaw Man. It all started here. It all started with Devilman. Angels fleeing the devils, but the devils are eating them up. Eee! Ah, yeah. And, pretty disgusting, yeah. Oh yeah, and if you noticed, all these angels here, they have male and female parts. So they're hermaphrodites. And they all merged into one, or they came to this one being with several wings. And this is probably a fucking god or something. But this is a supreme angel being fighting against the devils. Yeah. Kaboom. And they also, all these devils merged into one being. Now all the merged angels are fighting against all the merged devils. I forgot about a lot of this because it's been like 6 years since I read the first half of Devilman. I never completed Devilman. I only read like 2 or 3 volumes of it. Which is why it's nice to refresh my memory and also to finally finish something that I started years ago and enjoyed, but just didn't finish. Oh, I like this. Within, this is also something that I appreciate a lot about Devilman. There's also a lot of implications. Nothing's really like this thing here is not really explicit what is happening. Like what type of war this is, why they're waging war, how it's happening, what type of beings they are, who are the good, who are the bad guys. We just know that within these merged devils, let's say this is a super devil and that's a super god or something on the other side. And within the super devil, there's like a source of energy, and it's an angel with 12 wings. So that is one divine being, a godly, sacred, an angelic being that is actually on the side of the devils. It's feeding them with its energy. At least that's my interpretation of what was going on. We never know how the war ended. We're just jumping to 1980, whatever. Himalayan mountains. 1980? Whatever. This was written in 1970. Maybe it's like supposed to be a sci-fi novel, manga. Okay, mountain climbers, and then there's this dark mass. Just this dark ass mass. They're entering a cave. And they're seeing the frozen devils. What is that? Huh? And it's the devils in the ice. Oh my god! Cracking open. And breaking out. Run! And now they're being chased by the devils. These explorers. And look at the devils. Look. Cracking open a cold devil with the boys. One of the leftist themes of civil society at the time was also global warming. It was nuclear energy, global warming, and these devils broke out because glaciers are melting because of global warming. So whoever says that global warming is like a myth of our generation here, no. See, in the 1970s, it was a topic that was heavily in the focus of where are we going with our future. Oh, that was chapter 1 already. That was great because there were not many words. Should we read chapter 2? But I kind of wanna... Yeah, let's read chapter 2. Here you can already see Amon. And I wish I had my my book of demon sigils from Solomonic magic or whatever with me here, but I don't. So next time, when we're back in Austria, we can take a look at how to summon Amon and what type of devil or demon he was. I love when authors present a story purely visually. Yeah, telling a story without words comprehensively is so impressive. Yeah, exactly. Devil's Resurrection. Chapter 2. This is Akira. Look at the cute art style. I love it. I love the 70s manga style. Fudo-kun. Hey, I kept you waiting. Sorry about that. No problem. I was camped out in the library reading a book. Again? Why don't you pick up a sport? You'd have loads more fun. Ha 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 ha. Also, oh fuck, what was her name again? Miki? I think it was Miki. She's super funny in the manga because she's like, You could be so sexy if you just worked out a bit. You should have more muscles. You'd be so hot. You could pull any girls if you just fucking worked out a bit. No way, I'm not cut out for athletics. Really? You have the build for it. It's personality, not body type. I'm not aggressive enough. Plus, I just really don't like sports. Hey, what's with the weird laugh? Misudo Akira is truly a refined and gentle lady. She's such an asshole. Am I right? And he's blushing. She described him as feminine because he's not doing sports and being nice. I've heard all the stories. You were supposedly a massive crybaby in elementary school. Hehe. They called you the Higashi Elementary Fire Alarm. Cute. I heard if they got you going at recess, you'd bawl through your classes for the rest of the day. She's such an asshole. You don't know, but you're my English teacher. I wanted you to know. Oh, I'm happy about that. Thank you. It's an honor. Who told you that? Ah, my pops did. He was best friends with your dad, so I've heard all about you. I also heard you took the long way to school because you were scared of the neighbor's dog. See, Akira was just such a nice, cute, gentle little boy. And then, that one time, stop already! Come on, Miki-chan, cut me a break. Ah ha 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 ha. So, between the two of them, Miki-chan is the one that's, wearing the pants in this relationship. She's the badass here. She's not scared to, tease boys. Woot woo! Hey, Romeo! Kehehe. What do we got here? And see, these are the types of delinquents that were probably inspired by the school violence thing that inspired later on uniformity in Japan, in Japanese schools. Holding hands on a little date, lovebirds? Arm in arm, walking side by side. Woot woot. Next is the part where you kiss her, right? Miki-chan, just pretend you don't know them. All they want is attention. What? Come on. Mister, you see that? He's touching her back. Ooh la la. You sweethearts sure make a pretty couple. Wahaha. What? Show's over? Come on, why don't you do a love scene for us? Kissy kissy. You just going to take that, Akira? Yeah, you should do the same. If we respond, it'll be worse. So the crybaby is still a crybaby, huh? Aww. Look how sad he looks. So cute. Hey, kiddies, it's getting awful late. You'd better run home to mama. Don't stop for a quickie on the way. Bastards! Miki-chan! Little pricks! Shut your filthy mouths! See? She's the one that can actually say, stop that shit. Whereas Akira's like, oh, let's just go home. Let's not say anything. They just want attention. They're just. It's gonna get worse if we say anything. And she's like, shut the fuck up, assholes. And that's more like it. You think dressing tough makes you tough? Idiots! You look like kids at a costume party. You're nothing. No one would even care if you died. Miki-chan, stop! Don't egg them on. We need to go. So just die already. Oi, Makimura, that's quite the mouth you got. I'd watch it if I were you. We was just cheering you on from the sidelines, Makimura-chan. Why you have to go and say something like that? Yeah, that was going a little too far. And now they're surrounding them and they're like, you gotta pay up. You hurt us emotionally. How are you gonna take responsibility? Just a little bit. Now we gotta get rough with you. You know how I got my nickname Slapping Mickey? If you don't, I'll teach you. And she's really slapping them the entire time. She's a badass. And Akira is just scared. He's just shitting his pants. Heh, that's enough, bitch. You had your fun. And Akira is not even helping her. Akira-kun! Hey, don't dump this in my lap. Excuse me? Could you, see what a wimp he is? You guys, to be honest, the reason I walk home with Makimura-san, her place is my home too. Her family's taking care of me. Oh, now I'm really jealous. Shacking up with that hottie. Kinda selfish, eh? Hehe. Be a pal and share. Give us a taste of that sweetness. See, that's pretty fucking gross. Akira-kun, why are you talking to them? Kick their butts. She's on about that again. I'd really rather avoid that. Oi, Fudo. Huh? There he is. There he is. Now, if you think Griffith from Berserk is bad, you're gonna see what's batshit crazy now. You're gonna see who the real father of craziness is. Who Griffith was inspired by, and whose ankles he can't even reach. You're gonna see real crazy right now. Asuka! Look at what he's wearing and what he's gonna whip out. I swear to God, this... Anyway. Fudo, I got business with you. Come to my place. Wait, I'm kinda in the middle of... Well, you can see for yourself. What I got is more important. Come on. Wait! I can't just leave like this. Can you lend a hand? Yo! We doing this or not? This fight is so ridiculous. Come on already, bring it on. 3 against 3, that's a fair fight, right? I got my dance partner right here. You two take care of those asswipes. Heh. Not exactly fair for us. I guess we can still have our fun. Whipping out knives and a chain. And Ryo. Look at Ryo. He has a fucking gun. Yeah. Not easy to get a pistol in Japan. And his facial expressions, I swear to fucking God. What he's doing is just so fucking insane. And the way he reacts, the way his face is, it's just so fucking insane. I love it. I live for him. So I modded this hunting rifle. Whoa! That's just... boss. What? That's a fake. Bah! It may be so. But if it is real, then you'll all end up dead. That motherfucker didn't go to school. He just came here to cause a scene. He came here to murder people. It's funny when you think about how he just came. It was like, yo, Akira. And Akira's like, yo, I'll be with you shortly. There's a fight happening. And it was like, oh, no, I'm gonna handle this. Fucking... It's so insane. He just came to get Akira, but not without a knife. Without a gun. You're one crazy bastard. Hehe. That's right. Kablam. He actually shot at them. Ah! Yikes! Ah! Let's go, Fudo. Right. And Akira is like, yeah, my friend just came here with a gun and almost murdered people. But I'm gonna go with him, okay? Miki, you go home. This is normal. This is fine. He is totally normal. Miki-chan, I've got to... You go on home ahead, okay? Take my case. Ryo, wait up. And he even gave her his bag. He's like, I don't know what the fuck is up with Ryo right now and what the fuck happened. But make you take my bag. Go home, bitch. My friend called me, and if it's between you and him, you know who I'm gonna pick. Yo, what the hell? Why do you even have that? My life is in danger. Seriously? But if the police find out you got a gun? What's after me is more terrifying than the police. What? Yeah, I can't believe it either. What's more terrifying than the police? Get in. And there's a fucking car. Who's gonna drive us? You? Me. What? You're not 18. You're not old enough to have your license. I fixed up my dad's old license. I'm 18 enough. He got a gun. He got a car. And he got a license. He's fucking crazy. I'm 18 enough. We're gonna get caught. And Akira still sat in the back seat. He's so scared of Ryo, he can't sit next to him. He declined, he just sat on the back seat. We're gonna get caught. Relax. If anyone gets caught, it won't be you. Clunk. And he's speeding. Slow down, are you alright? Akira's just going along with it. He's like, my friend showed up with a gun. He's telling me to follow him because his life is in danger, which means my life is in danger if I go with him, but okay. And he's driving a car right now that he could kill us right now. But that's all fine, that's normal. I love it. I love it. This is why I say it reads like a shit post. Slow down, are you alright? You're acting really strange today. I still can't believe you fired an actual gun, even if it was just to scare them. You could have really hurt someone. They can drop dead for all I care. I love Ryo. He's just so insane. Sheesh, and Akira's like, okay. I mean, this is normal. You know, after my dad took that job overseas, my whole family went with him. I still had to go to school, so the Makimura family was nice enough to let me move in with them. We get the whole backstory right now in this car. On this dangerous-ass car ride, for some reason. Apparently, Ryo doesn't know how they got here, so Akira has to tell him how they got here. But that meant I had to transfer schools. That makes it about a month since I last saw you, even though you're my best friend. So they go to different schools, okay. You really changed a lot in that month. Well, it's not bad. There's nothing wrong with changing, but still. This is my favorite page. Akira is rambling like, I mean, you changed, and then he falls into silence. Looking out the window as they're speeding on the highway there. And then Ryo is like, my father's dead! He just screams that. Look at his smug face in the first panel. And then look at his screaming face in the next one. And then look at his calm face in the third one. This is an emotional roller coaster. The first few chapters are, in general, it's just a roller coaster. This entire manga. It's best consumed high. What? Professor Asuka is... Hehehehe, the last of my line. It was just him and me. And now, just me. He's fucking insane, I tell you. I've got nothing left. That's just... But... And Akira's crying for him. When I said goodbye to him last month, he looked fine. Yeah. I didn't say it was a natural death. It was suicide! Like, I thought at first Akira was asking, it was suicide? But no, it's just suddenly Ryo started screaming. He said, I didn't say it was a natural death. It was suicide! He poured gasoline over himself and lit a match. And Akira's like, what? At this point, I'd be like, can you please park the car somewhere? Can we talk? What is going on, Ryo? But not with Akira. Akira and Ryo. Especially Ryo. You're gonna see why I'm saying this, but he's so fucking crazy. He's so insane. He's so evil. He was burning alive and kept pouring more and more gasoline on himself. But why would he? His body was like charcoal. But it was twice as heavy as when he was alive. That's where the mystery is starting. What? But how? My dad was skinny, but his corpse weighed almost 300 pounds. What is that in kilogram? Can we have normal measurements, please? And speeding. You're speeding. The size of his body was the same, but it weighed as much as 2 people. That sounds like a horror story, not real life. He left me an inheritance. A dreadful inheritance. I wish I'd never known. I would have lived a happier life. There's no turning back the clock. I have to face it. But it's not something I can handle alone. Fudo Akira, I want you to share in what my father left me. The dreadful inheritance? See, this is insane. This is the first real chapter. The first chapter was just pictures of an ancient biblical war happening millions of years ago. And the first chapter, you have all of this, like the first chapter where dialogue is happening. You have all of this getting dumped onto you, the reader. Now, that's what I call a first chapter. It came in with a bang. The dreadful inheritance? And now they're arriving at the estate. Scurry. Look at that. Rich people. Asuka. Fudo. Before you pass through these gates, I have to ask something. You're my best friend, and I will ruin you. This is, oh, I love it. It's so romantic. You're my best friend, and I will ruin you. I never wanted to get you involved in this, but there's no one else. No one I can trust. Everyone else is my enemy. What my father left, the only human being I can show is you, Fudo Akira. Please understand. He asked for consent. He's like, what's gonna happen now? You're gonna suffer from now on if you go through this gate. Do you wanna? And, Akira's like, oh my god, you said I'm your best friend? Okay. I admit I'm afraid, but Asuka, I won't betray your trust. I'm with you to hell and back. See, these are true bros. True friends. Creek. And now they're gonna go through hell. When I spoke those words, I didn't realize just how close to the truth I'd come. Through that gate was the end of the bright future of the boy called Fudo Akira, and the end of all his dreams. I've heard the sound of that creaking gate across the years ever since. Getting in. Chuck. A picture of his dad, super hairy, and his mom, super pretty. You know, my dad was an archaeologist. And this is I think this part inspired JoJo. The first part. You know my dad was an archaeologist? Of course. They're reading books now. They're going through albums and they're like, oh, let's reminisce and laugh about the good old times, even though you told me a horrifying story about your dad pouring gasoline over himself in front of you, burning to a crisp and weighing far more. My alarm is ringing. Let it ring. I don't even know what I wanted to say. Let's go back. I need to turn off the alarm. Sorry. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. Okay. And you told me he left you a legacy that's terrifying. Well, let's have a good old time here. Professor Asuka was famous. Since he was an academic, I figured his life would be dull as dirt. But look at him. He died a horrifying death, like in a horror story. Who would have thought that? I never expected a boring old professor to go away like that. Here he is with some hot foreign chick. That's my mom. Oops! Awkward. So, he's into MILFs, huh? And so we know that Ryo's mom is canonically hot and foreign. Anyway, what's this inheritance? I'll show you. Follow me, my father's research room. I think my father came across this exploring Mayan ruins, and here again we have a Mesoamerican, or American, let's just call it American, ancient culture, an archaeologist, someone discovering a mask, spoilers, oopsie, from that region that holds the key to a mystery. So yeah, I think my father came across this exploring Mayan ruins. When he was searching through the jungle nearby, he slipped and fell into a hole hidden by the underbush. The opening was small, but it was deeper inside than you'd think. My father slid down a steep slope. He had no idea where he was heading. When he finally hit bottom, he found something strange. A 10. Hey, I can't see a thing. Turn on the lights. You don't need lights to see. Look. Oh, I love the art style. Also, I love... Remember what Ryo told you here? The way he told the story. He never really said, and this is what he found that time. He never said that. He never finished this story of his father slipping, falling, and finding something. But it's implied here with the next page. This. Stream died temporarily again. I guess that's our sign to stop. Let me just see how many fucking pages there are in this chapter. Bro, that's too much. Let's just remember where we stopped, okay? At this mask. This is where we stopped. I have to go now. I'm sorry about that. We were pretty slow today, but I think it was necessary, everything that I talked about. Alright, we stopped at the mask. in the middle of chapter 2. I don't know how long chapter 2 is, but we're gonna stop now. So anyway, this is gonna be a great journey. You're gonna get to know the father of all your favorite manga, the forefather. It's gonna be amazing. You're gonna get to know your favorite manga even on an even deeper level. Okay. So yeah, this is it for today. Thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed yourselves and have a nice day, evening, or night wherever you are. Bye bye.